Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. This is our first webinar for 2016, and I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Cindy Rice. Cindy is the president of Eastern Food Safety and comes to us today with wonderful credentials. She's a registered sanitarian, a certified professional in food safety, and also holds a master's degree in public health. She is also an epidemiologist. Cindy is a certified HACCP manager, ServSafe instructor, and also provides expert advice to Ecolab and Ecolab's national customers. Over the last 3 years, Cindy has also served as a technical consultant and trainer for the National Environmental Health Association, where she has developed a training program on food recalls and outbreak investigations. She writes for various trade publications, including Food Safety Solutions and the Griffin Report. Her own publications include Don't Pick Off the Croutons, an allergy guide for food service, a pocket guide for food safety, and a PIC manual, and also a series of online training videos for the food service industry, including Food Safety Show and Tell, a language-free visual demonstration of food safety procedures for food workers. Today, Cindy will discuss the FDA requirements for date marking and labeling. In the webinar, Cindy also will share how to diminish risks with a consistent program for labeling and food rotation, how to avoid common labeling mistakes, key tips for proper labeling, and the effects of proper labeling on food quality, safety, and operational efficiency. With that, I present to you Cindy Rice. Cindy, take it away.
Thank you, Miriam. It's great to be with you all today. No matter what type of food establishment you are in, most food workers have been told at some point to label foods after preparation and rotate them according to first in, first out methods. But many people are still not quite sure what that means. What information should they be recording on the label and why? In this presentation, we'll review the scientific reasons behind first in, first out, FIFO, food rotation, why a good labeling program is essential for operating safely. And this is especially important considering the climate of outbreaks and food recalls which seem to threaten our industry today. Anything that we can do to increase the safety of our foods is a huge benefit. So we'll discuss how labeling can help you operate more efficiently, how it affects food quality, and controlling food costs. We'll review some common problems around labeling and offer some tips for you and your staff for maintaining an effective labeling program in your establishment. The effects of not labeling or rotating products are plain to see. Rotten, wilted produce buried underneath cases of newer product, expired products on the shelf, or several containers of the same types of salad dressing open at the same time. You can just see the dollars flowing down the drain in an instant when you uncover some of these things. And food quality also slips away day by day as these conditions continue on. Our best defense against these issues is consistent food labeling, because labeling products is what enables us to rotate them for the benefits of increased food quality, safety, and controlling food waste. As you know, a FIFO program, first in, first out, consists essentially of these activities. And the goal of FIFO is essentially to use foods at the peak of quality and freshness, and of course at safe levels. It includes date marking foods, rotating them according to their use-by dates, using the oldest foods first, and when receiving, putting newest foods on the shelves behind the older products. What are the regulations around labeling and food rotation? Well, according to the 2013 FDA Food Code, ready-to-eat TCS foods must be date marked with their use-by dates before refrigeration if they're not going to be used within 24 hours. And these refrigerated foods must be used within 7 days of preparation. Why is this? Well, as you know, live bacteria, very often pathogenic bacteria, can exist in most foods and even in cooked foods, and can grow a little bit every day, even when stored in the refrigerator. After 7 days total, the bacteria could have grown to such dangerous levels it's not safe to eat these products and they must be discarded. The FDA Food Code also states that food contact surfaces should be clean and free of debris. If labels are not washed off of containers completely, old labels or residue left on equipment and containers could be a source of contamination, and some jurisdictions would cite this as a food code violation. So food safety is a primary concern with these particular FDA code references, but rotation and labeling can also be for quality reasons at the same time. Some possible consequences if we don't have a consistent labeling and rotation program include the potential for foodborne illness outbreaks due to lack of labeling or poor rotation practices and resulting pathogen growth, poor food quality, and these instances could result in product loss, waste, increased food costs, and ultimately customer dissatisfaction. So labeling has a huge impact on minimizing all of these risks. We're going to look at some labeling and safety factors as they are affected by labeling and rotation and address some of the most common issues establishments face and solutions that can help. Quality issues are usually the big motivator for us to label foods and practice FIFO methods in refrigerated products. And by quality, we mean the freshness of foods, wholesomeness, taste, color, smell, appearance. It's usually spoilage bacteria in foods that cause them to smell bad, taste sour, turn strange colors, but they may or may not make someone sick. Even spoiled sour milk or watery tuna salad may not be dangerous to eat, but food operations often have strict discard limits for foods because of the quality first, not necessarily safety. And quality is what usually impacts returning customers, customer satisfaction. Quality issues are also tied hand in hand with food costs from an operator point of view, and of course, profits. In dry goods, reduced quality usually means loss of color, declining taste. In some dry goods, tiny larvae could be present in dry goods or pasta and can hatch over time, especially if you're purchasing bulk dry goods in large containers. Nuts and grains could become rancid when aging in time, and these naturally would cause us to discard these products, which directly affect the bottom line. One solution could be purchasing these dry goods in smaller quantities, labeling the product containers, and rotating them by date, using them quickly before bugs hatch or before rancidity sets in. Frozen foods can also decline in quality over time. 1 year is usually the general accepted limit for keeping frozen foods from a quality point of view, depending on the packaging, the type of food, and the storage temperature. Even if frozen foods develop characteristics such as freezer burn, which is shown here on the screen, dry surfaces, or ice crystals, they can still be safe to eat, even though the taste or the appearance may be compromised. And these characteristics often cause us to discard them over time. This would be a direct impact on product loss and increased food costs. Labeling and rotating frozen goods can help tremendously, so we use them before these declining characteristics set in. But labeling is most critical for safety of foods. Considering the outbreaks that we are experiencing today, anything that we can do to protect our foods and prevent problems of any kind is important and necessary for a safe and successful business. There are many instances where food may look fine and safe to eat, but we really do have to be concerned about their safety in spite of their good looks. Date marking foods appropriately is the only way to ensure that foods are used within safe time limits. Foods might look good in quality, but could still contain certain harmful microorganisms, including Listeria, Clostridium botulinum, Clostridium perfringens, to name just a few. These bacteria can grow to high levels over time, even in the refrigerator, with risk of causing illness if these foods are consumed. Our main protection against these bacterial risks is labeling and date marking. So expiration dates become extremely important so that foods are used in a timely manner. One of these bacteria of particular concern is Listeria, which is associated with dairy products, soft cheeses, deli meats, and ready-to-eat foods, and has been the cause of outbreaks all across the country over the last few years. These bacteria are very hardy and resistant. They easily thrive in cool, moist, salty foods, and they can grow in the refrigerator at temperatures even down to as cold as 37 degrees Fahrenheit. They also grow inside vacuum packaging without oxygen. The lack of oxygen in these packages prevents spoilage bacteria from growing, which is typically what would cause us to discard foods as their appearance declines. This gives us a false perception that the product is safe to eat because the food, the color, etc., looks good inside, but the more dangerous Listeria bacteria are still growing. Our only protection is to date mark and rotate these foods and consume them before bacteria has grown to high levels. Another thing about Listeria is that it can come right into your establishment with your deliveries. This is a picture of a milk truck. These milk cases can be contaminated with Listeria right from the dairy plant. They can contaminate everything in their path, bringing the bacteria into your kitchen. Listeria is very hard to kill, and it easily persists in refrigerators, dairy cases, on equipment, in the drains, and even floating in the air. So labeling and rotating these products is the key to protecting them from Listeria, plus proper refrigeration and good sanitation practices. And one other thing to note about Listeria, this bacteria is at highest risk to persons with compromised immune systems. There's a 90% hospitalization rate and approximately 20% death rate. And it's only someone with a compromised immune system usually only needs to eat between 1 and 100 Listeria to get sick, where the rest of the population would probably have to eat about 1,000 Listeria to get sick. And if you remember the Listeria outbreak we had in cantaloupes a couple of years ago, 90% of the infections occurred in the elderly. As mentioned just a moment ago, reduced oxygen packaging of food prevents spoilage bacteria from growing, so the food looks safe and of good quality, but this is deceptive. Clostridium bacteria are often present inside these vacuum packages. They grow and produce a deadly toxin in the absence of oxygen, especially if these vacuum packages or sous vide products linger in the refrigerator for too long or are exposed to elevated temperatures. The botulinum toxin is produced as the package sits there in the refrigerator over time, and the toxin is not destroyed by cooking, and someone could get to the disease botulism if they consumed this product. So we really need to date mark vacuum-packed, sous vide, or reduced oxygen packaged foods, rotate them according to their use-by dates, and use them promptly within their expiration dates before the bacteria has had a chance to grow to high levels and produce a toxin. Cooked foods are often misunderstood with regard to their risk of bacterial growth and safety. Harmful bacteria are normally killed to safe levels through cooking of foods, but some bacteria often survive cooking. And spore formers such as Clostridium perfringens and Bacillus cereus also survive cooking and could exist in these cooked TCS, time and temperature control for safety foods. These particular bacteria are normally protected by a thick wall called a spore, but after cooking, they have the moisture and the protein and possibly the carbohydrates they need to grow, which allows them to burst out of their spores. Over time, they multiply and produce poisonous waste products, depositing them in the foods. Cooking and reheating these foods would not destroy the toxins and could cause illness. It's the toxin which actually would cause illness in these cases. Date marking foods with their discard date allows us to use them within the safe window of time before these bacteria and other spore formers have grown to dangerous levels. Cooling foods quickly also would help to limit the growth of these types of bacteria, but cooling is actually a discussion topic for another time. So labeling foods and practicing FIFO food rotation directly impacts food safety and food quality. But not having a solid food rotation program also drives up food costs, directly or indirectly. In this day and age, the food service industry is coming to realize that we cannot afford not to have a food safety program in place, and labeling is a big part of that. Here are some common mistakes made by restaurants when it comes to labeling, which you may have experienced at one time or another in your own food establishments. The most common mistake is probably knowing what information to put on the label. Very often, workers will label foods with a preparation date only, or incomplete, inconsistent information recorded on a label. Inaccurate dates or not calculating the correct use-by date is a big, big problem. And sometimes on a label, and you've probably experienced this, I know I have, you walk into a cooler, you see all these pieces of tape or paper or labels on containers with a single date on them. And it's not always clear, is this the preparation date, the use-by date, the sell-by date, the birth date? This is a very, very common occurrence, and it really makes rotating products next to impossible when you don't know what date you're even dealing with. Illegible markings on the label are also often seen, tape used instead of labels, or very often no labels at all. And here are some common reasons why people make mistakes in labeling. Very common mistake or reason for not labeling properly are the time constraints of food workers. In a busy restaurant operation, very often people are running around seemingly with not enough time to label foods properly like they should have. Also, very often workers have not been trained in a consistent labeling method, and they're sometimes confused about what information is required by their company to appear on the labels. In addition to a use-by date, a lot of companies would like to include some extra information, including preparer information, nutritional info, allergens, ingredients, and food handlers can sometimes be confused about what exactly should go on that label. As I mentioned a moment ago, a lot of mistakes in calculating discard dates. This is very, very common. Also, not having labeling materials or supplies conveniently located where people are actually doing the labeling. So if they don't have supplies handy, it is one more barrier to them on labeling correctly. Another common challenge is using the wrong adhesive on a label. There are different types of adhesives available out there today in the market. Some of them adhere very securely to a package. Some of them dissolve under moist conditions. And using the wrong adhesive on a label can also impede the practicality of the label itself. And language barriers and learning differences in employees are also a very common occurrence in our industry, and these can pose challenges in training and communicating methods for labeling and rotating correctly. So improper labeling can affect the quality, safety, and ultimately food costs. In refrigerators and other storage areas, we often can see multiple containers of the same product open at the same time, foods not labeled or date marked at all, incomplete, inaccurate dates on the products by the staff, which prevents correct food rotation, as I already mentioned that before. And one obvious result is leaving expired goods or older products on the shelves behind newer products in the refrigerator or dry storage shelves. And another issue is sticky label residue or masking tape or old labels stuck on containers. And in a lot of jurisdictions, this is cited as a food code violation. So we want to watch out for the cleanability of these food contact surfaces as well. I want to talk for a moment about the use of masking tape in our establishments and substituting masking tape for labels. A lot of people think that masking tape saves them money. But if you look at this comparison here, you can see that there are some real differences between masking tape and labels that might make you think twice. Masking tape can leave a residue on containers that could trap contaminants and even be a violation in some jurisdictions if food contact surfaces are not clean to touch. Sometimes people stick new tape over old tape, which is really confusing, or having multiple labels on the same container, which is also confusing to the user. Tape also leaves it up to the employee which information to record on the label. This can lead to omitting certain important information or unclear, illegible markings. In contrast, pre-printed labels prompt the user on what information exactly they need to record. And labels are often more easily removed, leaving cleaner surfaces, plus the color coding option guides the date marking step. And then there is the cost factor. Managers often make the mistake of opting for what they think is the cheaper labeling strategy that ends up costing them dollars and food safety controls in the long run. A recent study showed that the average number of labels used per restaurant is 75 labels a day. With masking tape, there is a lack of control on how much tape is used per container, and this study showed that an average length of masking tape was 8 inches per use. But on top of that, sometimes rolls of masking tape disappeared, or the tape is used for other purposes in the restaurant or projects at home and is not limited to the labeling for which it was intended. In contrast, the costs are more controlled with a pre-printed label, one label per use. So if you look at the annual costs for masking tape versus pre-printed labels, it pretty clearly shows that opting for the so-called cheapest strategy is not always cheaper or more effective in the end. So when you want to consider using masking tape versus labels, consider these 3 factors: cleanability, consistency, and true costs. And you want to choose wisely. A consistent labeling program is critical to a successful food operation. Our objective simply is to use the oldest foods first before they expire when they are at their peak of freshness. But employees are not always clear on how to label properly or which information to include on the label. So we want to take the guesswork out of labeling wherever we can to make it easy for our staff and help them to eliminate mistakes. For purposes of food rotation, the most important date to consider is the use-by date or the discard date. First, we want to label the product container with the date that the product must be used by or discarded. That's the most important information on a container. We want to follow shelf life code dates or manufacturer's use-by dates if available, and discard the food after the use-by date. And determining the use-by date is sometimes challenging and can be a source of confusion for many restaurants. According to the FDA Food Code, if a ready-to-eat TCS, that's a time and temperature control for safety food, will not be used within 24 hours, it must be date marked with the use-by date. When calculating this date, the preparation date is day 1. And from there is a 7-day limit for prepared foods in the refrigerator. So if the preparation date is Sunday, the 7 days after that would be the following Saturday. That 7-day limit would expire on that following Saturday. And that use-by date, the final date on Saturday, is the one that should be recorded on the label. This also applies to commercially prepared, ready-to-eat foods that you purchase from an approved supplier. Once a commercial container is opened, and if the contents are only partially used, the remaining contents should be labeled with the use-by date, and this is not to exceed 7 days in the refrigerator at 41 degrees or below. Your company may have even stricter requirements for use-by dates, but this is just the guideline that FDA is putting out in the 2013 Food Code. There's sometimes confusion on these different date marking terms, and I'd like to review them briefly just to clear up any confusion. The use-by date is the date after which the food is not safe to consume because of possible pathogen growth. The sell-by date usually applies to dairy products, and they must be sold by that date. But these dairy products are usually safe to consume 3 or 4 days later. And we usually use quality characteristics, such as smell or taste, as our guide on discarding these. The best if used by date is usually seen on pastries, chips, crackers, canned goods, and implies that the product should be used by that date for best quality, for the best taste, texture, appearance, but the product is safe to consume a little bit later than that date. You're probably familiar with these pre-printed labels. They standardize the information to be recorded on the label. And these pre-printed labels take away confusion on what information should be filled out on the label. You can either circle the use-by date according to the days of the week shown at the bottom, or you can handwrite the use-by date right there, as shown in that yellow bar there on the label. And there are many other options for additional information on a label depending on what your establishment desires or requires for their operation. At a minimum, the use-by date is essential, but you can also add the name of the preparer, the item names, etc. And different adhesives on labels are also available depending on your needs. Some labels are extremely easy to remove from containers, and they eliminate label residue, which is a huge benefit. Some labels are completely dissolvable in seconds in the warewasher or in a dishwashing situation. And some will securely fasten to containers and don't come off easily in freezers or refrigerators or moist situations. Color-coded labels are great. Each color represents a different day of the week. And at a glance, the colored label tells when the food should be used by. These help take the guesswork out of labeling, eliminating mistakes and confusion on what exactly is the use-by date. And the colors cross over learning barriers and language differences, and they help encourage rotating products using colors as the guide for use-by dates. One word of caution on color-coded day-of-the-week labels, however. Some operators use these colors to indicate the preparation date, but the intended use is for colors to represent the use-by date, since this is the information we really need for proper rotation of our products. Programmable printers also take the guesswork out of food rotation. In these machines, the shelf life, use-by dates are pre-programmed for different products, and this information can be updated online as needed. So not only do these programmable printers ensure label consistency, they take out the guesswork, they save a lot of time too, a lot of benefits to label printers. A common problem in food service is multiple containers of the same product in use at the same time. These use first labels can help easily identify products that need to be used first. At first glance, they help eliminate confusion, and then an individual will just reach in the cooler and pull out this bright colored label. It jumps out at you, it goes past language or learning barriers, and minimizes product duplication and loss. Allergy awareness is a growing concern in the restaurant industry. Research shows that 80% of allergic individuals have had reactions while eating outside the home, but only 1/3 of them carry EpiPens with them at all times. And I think this is a real area of concern to food establishments. It's critical that restaurants try to prevent allergic reactions in their establishments. And this allergy warning label was designed to be secured to a container of foods and notifies kitchen staff that a prepared food contains one or more allergens or ingredients of concern, such as gluten even. And this label can be used as part of your allergy control program to ensure guest safety. This label is, hold on a second here. There you go. This label is specially designed for use in meal service. You attach this label onto the finished plate, and there are options for checking off certain allergens or gluten, indicating that the dish has been prepared without a particular ingredient. This label not only eliminates confusion in the kitchen, but it reassures the customer that his or her meal has been protected from cross-contact with a harmful ingredient. Colorful posters and visual aids in the kitchen can also help with your labeling strategies. They act as constant reminders for your staff on how to label, day of the week, color-coded methods, and rotation methods. And these colorful posters and aids cross over language barriers and can help with your training as well. You're probably familiar with portioning your products. Portion bags will help you standardize your portion sizes, and they can be extremely beneficial for reducing food costs. And portion bags can also be color-coded with use-by dates, which makes for easy rotation in food storage. And an added benefit of portion bags is that they can reduce bare hand contact with food, cutting down risk of cross-contamination. Labeling activities absolutely support your food rotation program so that you're able to use the oldest foods first before they expire. To summarize, when receiving products, be sure that your products are labeled before putting them into storage and rotate and use them according to the use-by or sell-by date. After preparation, we want to date mark products with their use-by dates or use first labels. And day one, remember, is the preparation date, and there's a 7-day limit according to the FDA 2013 food code to how long that prepared food can sit in your refrigerator. And your company may set their own standards internally, maybe even a little stricter than the 7-day limit. In serving lines, salad bars, deli units, you want to try and put out smaller portions at a time and replenish your serving lines with backup containers according to FIFO methods, using the oldest containers of foods first. Here are some tips for implementing and maintaining an effective labeling and rotation system. Management, first of all, has to determine the appropriate information they need on their label. Most importantly, the discard date, and any other information can include production date, employee information, ingredients, or allergens. And you want to communicate methods to employees on how to label, how to rotate products, and the reason why that is important, and the consequences if it's not done properly. Train employees on your labeling system. Show them how to fill out the labels and what specific information is needed to be recorded. Show them how to store products in your coolers according to the discard date and how to rotate them and where to discard them if necessary. You may want to keep discard records if you have to discard any products. Also, be stocked with the right labeling supplies. You want to have labels that can accommodate the necessary information for your operation, label dispensers, label markers, and other materials needed, and store your labeling materials in an area that's convenient and accessible for your staff to save them time and make it easy for them to complete the necessary information. Select the proper adhesive for the containers that you are labeling. Do you need labels that dissolve in the warewashing area? Or do you need labels that can be removed easily with no residue? or labels that will remain securely on frozen or refrigerated packages, especially containers that might be affected by moisture. You want to try to overcome language barriers and learning differences of employees through visual posters, possibly color-coded labels and portion bags to help take the guesswork out of the system and eliminate mistakes in date marking and rotation. Consider a programmable printer, which can eliminate the need to calculate discard dates, and it eliminates a source of error in labeling and rotation. The benefits of a consistent food rotation program are many. From a quality perspective, food products will be fresher, with improved quality, taste, and appearance, resulting in higher customer satisfaction and repeat customers. From a safety point of view, date marking and rotating foods will lower the risk of harmful bacterial growth, resulting in safer foods and reduced liability of foodborne illness. And for cost controls, a consistent labeling and food rotation program will result in less product loss and waste, more efficient ordering practices, standardized portion sizes, more efficient employee behaviors, and improved compliance on inspections. In short, some people might look at labeling as a lot of work, but we need to look at it a different way. Labels work for you to keep food safe and to preserve quality, which translates into satisfied customers and keeping profits in the refrigerator. Are there any questions?
Yes, Cindy, this is Miriam again. We've had a number of questions that have come in. That was a wonderful presentation, and I think many aspects of labels were clarified for our audience. Here's a question regarding time as a public health control. If I wanted to use time as a public health control for foods during service periods, what labeling recommendations and requirements would there be? And maybe you want to just give a brief synopsis of what time as a control means.
Sure. Well, the temperature danger zone, according to the FDA food code, is 41 to 135, and is generally a 4-hour total limit that TCS foods can be exposed to these danger zone temperatures to be safe to consume. But there are some times when a food establishment might purposely leave foods out at room temperature without temperature control, using time as a guide to using the foods up quickly. And in order for an instance of when a restaurant might do this might be when they have a large lunch rush and they would like to prepare large volumes of meat pies or pizzas in advance, purposely leave these foods out at room temperature during a lunch period so that they can quickly be reheated to accommodate the large volume of customers in a short period of time. In order to do this legally, according to the food code, it's called using time as a public health control. They first of all need to get a variance or permission from the health department to do this in most jurisdictions, and they need to label the food when it comes out of the oven or out of the refrigerator with the time that it came out of temperature control. And they need to also note on that same label 4 hours the time at which the remainder of this food should be discarded. So if someone cooks a dozen pizzas at 10 o'clock in the morning and they leave them out over the next few hours, they need to label the sheet pans, I guess, of the pizzas with a label that says 10 a.m. and also have 2 p.m. as the discard time. And any pizzas that are not consumed within that 4-hour period need to be discarded at 2 p.m. So the labeling is a required component for food establishments wishing to use time as a public health control.
Thank you. I'll also just mention that different jurisdictions have different requirements for time as a public health control. With some of them, you must submit a plan to them in writing and have a plan available to show the inspector. So do know your local requirements when you're instituting time as a public health control for your restaurant. Can you describe how to calculate the use-by date for a menu that has ingredients that were prepared on different dates? That's a great question.
Sure. So if someone is preparing, say, a chicken salad, and they're making the chicken from scratch, so they cook the chicken, they cool it down properly, now it's in the refrigerator, and several days later they wish to turn that chicken into a chicken salad. In calculating the use-by date, the date of the ingredient that was prepared first becomes day one of the preparation becomes day one in the calculation process. So say you cooked your chicken on Monday, you cool it down, it's in the refrigerator, and on Wednesday you would like to turn that into a chicken salad. The use-by date would be 7 days after Monday, so it would be the following Sunday would be the use-by date. It's not the preparation date. It's the preparation date of the first prepared ingredient. I hope that came out clearly.
So whatever basically is the oldest product, that's what you would use as your guide.
Correct. Yes.
Very good. Someone wanted you to review again about calculating that discard date. So starting with day one.
Mm-hmm. So day one would be the preparation date of that particular ingredient or that food. So day one is the preparation date, and you count day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 days later after that would be the use-by date. So if you prepared a batch of tuna salad on a Wednesday, 7 days later would be the following Tuesday. That Tuesday date is the discard date, use-by date, and is the one that should be on the label, in addition to any other information that you'd like to put.
Thank you. And here's an interesting question. Has there been any industry initiative to lower insurance costs for better labeling practices or incorporating technology in labeling?
Lowering insurance? The technology in labeling, to me, it talks about, is referring to the printing machines, programmable printers. The shelf life of every menu item or ingredient is already pre-programmed into that, and it eliminates mistakes. So with the touch of a button after preparing a certain item, the correct shelf life or use-by date pops out with any other information that the company requires, and is a good way to eliminate mistakes. I'm not really sure what they're referring to about reduced insurance claims.
I think just talking about the fact that may help reduce some of the risk if you're monitoring it more accurately. There's nothing that I have heard of, but I think just minimizing risk, is a good reason.
Possibly they're referring to protect themselves against liability, to show that they've been